Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John Bunn, and I am very excited to be talking to you in your ear holes this week. It's been a lot over here at How to Film Weddings, a lot of new stuff going on. Today's interview is with Kyle Hustis. He's based in Arizona. I saw a film that he just produced. He bumped into me online. We've been talking a little bit, and I knew I needed and wanted him on the podcast today. We talk about risk, and we talk about a lot of things, honestly, but we walk through his journey, and I think you're going to be really inspired. I think that you're going to listen to this episode and really do some soul searching on why you're doing what you're doing, and considering what risks you need to be taking. And so I'm very, very excited about this episode. Before we hop into this week's episode, though, I want to tell you about our good friends over at VidFlow. I'm not sure if you're familiar with VidFlow. That is a digital delivery service for your wedding films. We love VidFlow. We're excited to have them as a partner and sponsor with us at How to Film Weddings. If you're wanting to take your digital delivery to the next level, head over to howtofilmweddings.com/VidFlow to check out the promos, to check out what they do. But man, these things are sexy. They're slick. It's really easy to upload your wedding films, deliver them to your couple, and present your brand in a way that is absolutely sexy and stunning. And that's why we love VidFlow so much. Be sure to head over to howtofilmweddings.com/VidFlow for special offers. With that, let's hop into this week's episode of the podcast. All right, well, welcome Kyle Hustis, not Hustis, to the How to Film Weddings podcast. Why don't you take a second, just introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you? And why are you? Just answer those easy questions.
Easy. So I'm Kyle Hustis. Even on the banner in my website, I make sure to have a little pronunciation guide. It's like Hustis. Kyle Hustis is me. I own Hustis Film Co. I am from Mesa, Arizona, which is a suburb here in Phoenix. So basically just the Phoenix Valley. Why I am? Well, back in 92, my mother gave birth to a tiny Chicano boy and no expectation to do much with his life. But here he is, just like sitting on here with How to Film Weddings. And so I'm super excited to be here.
You have arrived. Yeah, you, man, I've been seeing you a lot around, and we connected via the DMs a while back, and it was like, man, we got to get you on the podcast. We got to talk to you. I was sent a project that I want to talk about here in a bit. Your work is funky. It's quirky. It's cool. Your website is the same. Your haircut's the same. You have a really cool vibe, and you're just really good at kind of portraying the brand you want. It seems as though you've taken some big risks, and I want to dig into today, like your story a little bit, and then kind of, I like this idea of taking risks and what it's done for you creatively and in your journey to becoming a full-time wedding filmmaker. So 92, you were born, it seems. Fast forward to like 2017 or 2018, I think is when I saw you got going. Why'd you get into wedding films? And then maybe a little bit, just kind of the genesis of that story. I know you said before we hit record, you're married, you got some kids. So like, how did wedding filmmaking make its way into your melon?
So basically, it was around 2015, 2016, actually, when I had like I think a lot of us was inspired early on, including myself, with whatever Casey Neistat did. Yeah, you're probably familiar with him, right? Like the golden boy of YouTube. And so whatever storytelling he did, cameras he had, that was definitely something that I'm like, my wife's name is Michaela, and I would go to her and be like, look at like this guy Casey does online. It would just be so cool if I can get my hands on a camera and make a story out of basically whatever it is he does. Funny enough, I actually had some friends in the Valley that were already pretty well established as wedding videographers back in 2015, 16. And you can probably tell me different. I know that you have a lot of experience with the industry and for how long you've been in it, but it wasn't really like something that I imagine, or my family imagined, or my wife imagined that we could do all the time or full time. So I remember her finally convincing her to let me get a little Canon 70D, I think is what they were selling at Costco back in 2015 or 2016. Just kind of how all of us got our start, a kit from Costco. And, when you're freshly married, like I was back at that time, and there's a $1,200, which is basically all the money that we have in our account. That's like a scary purchase for what is a scary investment for what is like, is this going to be your hobby? What are you going to do with this camera exactly? And I just knew that I wanted a camera and to make cool stuff. So my friends had actually invited me to film a wedding, and that's when they had offers like, hey, we could use a second or third shooter from time to time. And I was elated. Like I was so excited at the fact that I can now like rationalize having gear because, having a cool camera was just exciting to me. And then like moving it over to the wedding field and getting something that could be monetized immediately with wedding films. It's like I don't have to wait to like grow like a YouTube following or nothing like that. I can make these films and people can potentially pay for me to do it, which was the coolest thing ever. So I remember back in 2016, officially, I had my very first wedding I ever did. I did a full like 10-hour day for $500. I got my first inquiry through Thumbtack. I don't know how much you guys are. Yeah, the Thumbtack days. The Thumbtack days. And so I met with them in person, and it was $500 for the whole day. And I was because as a bus driver, I was a school bus driver. $500 is what I would make in 2 weeks. And so I called my wife. I'm like, they're going to give me $500 to film this whole freaking wedding day. And it was I knew from that moment that I was excited to do it, not realizing that I would grow to continue to love it with time, because it has been, and I'll go into this in detail in a little bit, but it has been basically the only constant wedding filmmaking has been the only constant through all of those endeavors, through my part-time jobs, through having kids, through going through nursing school, through doing nursing itself and specializing in nursing, and then trying to start a business after the fact. Everything has always led to just me still not being able to let go of wedding filmmaking. And I think there's a reason to it. And I'll talk about it a little bit in depth. But that was basically the genesis, was wanting to do something, having friends that were well established, that were willing to take me on, and then branching out on my own to do that.
Yeah, I think I had these conversations with Heather, my wife, when I got going doing weddings in 2007. So it was definitely early. I mean, I remember finding wedding videos and like literally the only wedding videos that were happening were a 60-year-old dude with a tripod on wheels and a big bright light. And that was what people thought of. Just like, I'm going to wheel this tripod around. I'm going to film some stuff. And I just remember the first couple being like, hey, we're doing this. We'll give you $500, $1,000, whatever. And I was just like, I make $1,600 a month right now. Like, this is insane. Like, I love making films. And I have a very similar story. I think we might be very similar, just human beings, but in just the always coming back and just being like, I love doing this. I love that it's always new and creative and fresh. And wedding films, I've never gotten tired. 500 wedding films later, I still am happy that I was editing today and like in a really good mood because I'm putting together this sick story that I'm just really excited about. So you do a $500 wedding off of Thumbtack. That is not how I recommend marketing in 2025, but hey, it worked in 2016. Thumbtack can find you some good leads, but you got going, you shot that wedding. Tell me what happened like after. How did you take that from okay, that's my first wedding to now doing what you're doing, charging what you're charging? Just kind of, did you then start marketing more? Or did you start, like, what was kind of that story of getting those next bookings, what did you start to pay attention to?
So I think at the time that I started, it's like I was always really excited to keep doing them. Instagram was a heavy place for me, basically, and it always has been from the get-go, where I post on Instagram. And I think the ego kind of hit me relatively quickly, where I was maybe making, and even at the time, a video that was a little bit different than what I had seen, or maybe not super by the formula or very whimsical. And I thought like there would be this immediate jump that because a certain video got 1,000 views on Instagram, that there would just be like a plethora of inquiries right out the gate. It's just like, I'm not going to be able to like hone in on all these people that want my films. And obviously that wasn't the case, right? There was very much like a slow growth. And a lot of that was due to the fact that I was balancing two very heavy things. I was balancing going to nursing school because I did believe, and my family was definitely pushing, and rightfully so, because at least where I'm from, if you live like in the Mesa Gilbert area, you don't really associate wedding video with like a career, especially not back then, but still not today. You associate it more with what the younger kids might do right out of high school for like maybe like the LDS crowd for like temple weddings. So it's not really something they can imagine it for like if someone recently graduated out of high school or a niece or a nephew doing. Um, but it's not really something that my wife's family or my family could really see. It's like, this is like a really cool thing that you're doing, but I don't think they ever outright said it, but they're like, just keep to your nursing school, just keep it. You're having your kids. That's a smart thing you can do. And of course, that's something that I believed as well. So there was a lot of like me being passionate about filmmaking and balancing it with me going to nursing school and having my first kid. And luckily so, my wife was able to stay at home. We lived very much under our means for a while, having a small house that we rented for about $500 a month while I was doing this fast track nursing school that I would complete my whole degree in 2 years. And we were making our living and keeping our heads above water with me filming on the weekends. And that's how we made ends meet. And so it was undoubtedly to this day, the biggest grind of my life, doing fast track nursing school and filming in order to provide for my wife and kid. So it was not so much like me pushing to get more and more, just because of the time that was not allotted to me, the time that I didn't have. And it wasn't until I was doing nursing and doing filming full time, because again, I wasn't going to let filming go. I know that the only reason we were able to make things match up actually was because I was doing night shift nursing. And then as soon as my shift was over on the last night of the week, I wouldn't go to sleep. I'd go straight to a wedding that same weekend. So it was a crazy time for me. And I think what had people really, again, coming to me over and over again was just the difference they would see in my wedding films. And I don't know if I can explain it the best. I know that sometimes I can articulate it well, but they come to me and sometimes the clients that are attracted to these kind of wedding films are able to articulate it better than I can. And then I use their words to pitch it to other clients that might want me, is that they are very much attracted to the fact that I am interpreting a vibe, or no matter the contrast. And if it's very elegant, then I'll portray that. If it's very fun, then I'll portray that. I don't think I'll hide anything in order to fit a specific formula that they might contribute to a wedding video that they might normally see, because they've seen lots of wedding videos. And I think when they think of a wedding video, they think of the same whimsical guitar or strings or piano. And so that was keeping us alive, at least for that amount of time, with minimal pushing out besides, and advertising on my part besides what I would put on Instagram, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah. And it is hard to describe your films. I was watching some of them earlier and it's like, oh, these are, you definitely capture a specific vibe based on the couple. And I think that it's just kind of oozing out of you that you're trying with every film that you're putting out there to be very non-traditional and unique in a way that's not pushing too hard. It's not like you're just trying to be crazy, but also it's like, oh, this is different. This does not feel like your standard chapters song or your standard, which is a great path for so many of us. But that helped you stand out. And it was definitely a risk to do that instead of just, try to make something that you thought everybody else was wanting. And so 2015, 2016, you got your kit lens from Costco. What does business and life look like today in 2025? Like, fast forward for me a little bit. Like, what are you still doing nursing, or like, what was kind of that journey to get, like, when did you see things kind of start to change, I guess so?
Yeah. So, COVID happened. I was working full time as a nurse then, which I was grateful for because I hadn't pushed my filming well enough to be super busy during those COVID times. And so I was working full time as a nurse then, and then the boom came. The boom of basically everything that happened post-COVID, where all of those weddings were stacked on top of each other, 2021 through basically 2023, right? Where all the flood of inquiries came in. And at that point, I am super grateful for one thing that came out of me sticking to nursing all that time, is that I was an ICU nurse during COVID. And so there's a lot of different stories, and a lot of really upfront experiences I had with that time in everyone's life. And one of those things was perspective. Before I had started doing my full-time nursing job, I remember thinking that, so I have another wedding to do. I have another wedding to do. And it started to feel more and more like a job until I got into a job that was actually really, really difficult. And then I associated wedding film. It reinvigorated everything, right? It's like I associated wedding film as my fun job. It's like, why wasn't I grateful for this thing that I was doing before that I absolutely loved? So when all those inquiries came back in, and there was another seemingly opportunity for me to really jump into it and do full time again, that's when I had quit nursing. And that was at the beginning of 2022. And that wasn't an easy process. I know I messaged you a little bit about that, but I don't think I, un unfortunately, well, fortunately in retrospect too, because that really lit a fire under me. I'm that kind of person. But at that time, I don't think I had the privilege of anyone really close to me wanting to make that leap. My wife, I just had a second kid. We just bought a new house. My nursing manager was saying, "What are you doing? You have these kids. You're going to let go of your insurance," which was a surprise to me because I really respected her. And it hurt quite a bit because I know the risk that I was taking and leaving, but I knew the potential benefit of doing what I loved because, like I had said before, it had been this constant in my life that I couldn't let go of, regardless of the money I made somewhere else or regardless of the stability that I had in this job that I worked really hard to do. I knew that if I don't take this opportunity now with all these inquiries and all these bookings coming in and taking those weddings and really showcasing what it is I have to offer, at least where I live in Arizona, which is a market that I feel like that I believe has been kind of untapped in terms of like the non-traditional sphere, then I'm going to kick myself forever. So I made that leap, and that first year of 2022 was difficult. It was super worth it. I did things that I'd never thought to do before. I had advertised. I had made connections with people that I normally wouldn't make connections, planners, photographers. I had gotten my face in front of the camera, which is something I hadn't done prior to. I had found my humor online, and that was kind of its own risks in terms of like, okay, I'm going to do this sketch comedy stuff too. As long as I'm going to grow my hair out, I'm going to embrace this whole anti-traditionalist. I'm going to put my skeletons and skulls everywhere. It's not going to be white and gold. It's going to be black and white. It's going to be skeletons. It's going to be this silly Chicano in front of you the whole time with these non-traditional films. So all these kind of risks are stacking on top of each other. And fortunately for me, I think they're paying off. But I've always done everything within a vacuum without consulting anyone else. And luckily for me, it seems like the clients and the other vendors are telling me that they really enjoy it. So that's where I found it. It's been a huge blessing in that regard over time.
Yeah. So 2022, you're making this leap. You're finding your humor. You're getting in front of the camera. All these different things. I'm sure business is picking up. Obviously, it is a big risk when you're needing insurance and you're needing, what caused you said like, you're even you with your wife, like what caused you guys to both be like, okay, we're going to do this. And what was that experience like whenever you did take the leap?
When I took the leap, I'm telling you, my mind was on, what it was too, a lot of it is that I was super ballsy because in my experience at the time, I'd already experienced what it was to be face to face with something really tragic and deal with it on a daily basis. So, and not to get too deep into it, but ICU nursing really, really toughened you up, especially during COVID. There were some things that I experienced that I probably wouldn't relay obviously on a podcast, but I seldom relate to other people in terms of like the conversations that I had to have, the ultimatums that I had to make with patient families, the overall, just like the bedside manner that I would have to have in these really dire circumstances, specifically in an ICU, because in an ICU, obviously it's a little bit more dire than that. So I'm thinking to myself, if I can do something as difficult as that, I can do anything. So I'm going to my wife with like this full confidence, like I'm going to make a killing, trust me. And I'm very vocal with her about it. And I wanted to trust me. And that first season was fine. That first summer was rough. And I kept it all to myself. I remember internalizing because I had not anticipated how difficult it would be to do my first year of full-time filmmaking outside of nursing with that summer drop-off that we experienced in Arizona. But I didn't let the pride get the best of me to the fact that I wasn't willing to second shoot for people, associate for other people, associate for other companies. I think on the outside, there was definitely like the optics were there that Kyle is like really good and he kind of does his own thing when that wasn't necessarily the case. Any opportunity there was to make new connections, whether it be associate, second shooting, styled shoots, going out for other people, meeting other people, I was there for it. I'd love to be a team player in the community. And I do believe that was a big reason why it paid dividends on the back end and help us make get our family through that whole first year. And so I was able to successfully like let my wife know, hey, if I can do this first year, I for sure got the second year. So those conversations would come up again. I'm happy and thankful to say that we have 3 kids now, and we're probably in the best position we have been, despite the weird year that was last year. That was one of my more profitable years I've ever had. So that was a huge. It was very validating, and I'm lucky to even look back and tell you these kind of stories with an ounce of success on the back end. Like, hey, I did it despite a number of people not wanting me to.
Mm-hmm. One thing you said, and I had to do a little bit of this last year because when things get tight, a lot of us, especially some of us veterans that have been doing this for a while, we have 2 choices. We can either internalize and pretend that something bad isn't happening, especially for somebody that's a glass half full, even if there's just a drop in the container kind of guy like me. I had to really come to grips in July of last year. It's like, I don't have any bookings for the rest of the year, and I have no bookings for 2025. I have not done a good job of staying in front of people. Like I'd been doing how to film weddings and building that side of things, but kind of let John Bunn Films go off into the, the pasture and just like, go over there, we'll be fine. And I looked up and was like, wait a second. Last year was my first year that I didn't hit 6 figures in my brand in 14 years. Like I just was not paying attention to it. I needed a break from it. But at the same time, in July, I was like, wait a second, I need to get my butt back to work. I need to get humble. I need to figure out, I need to start messaging these planners. I need to be networking. I need to be doing, and I just, from July until now, we're recording at the end of January here and continuing, like there's this fire under me that I have booked 15 events now for this year to the tune of nearly 200K of bookings. And it's not, it's a great humble brag, and we all know I love a humble brag, but I had to like eat that piece of humble pie. And I kept saying that to my wife. It's like, hey, I'm gonna have to put in some work I haven't had to put in a while because I let this thing go. I'm gonna have to go do some free shoots. I'm gonna have to go do some marketing. I'm gonna sign back up for that magazine. I'm gonna do that styled shoot. I'm gonna be a part of that vendor thing. And it does pay off over time. But I wanted to pull from you. It's like, you can internalize it and say everything's going to be fine, or you can be like, oh, I'm going to still, like, part of this risk is knowing that times aren't always perfect and I might have to second shoot for someone or pick up some work or things like that. And last year being such a freaking weird year. Before we move on, I want to talk about our friends over at MusicBed. If you didn't know, MusicBed is the best place to license your music for your wedding films. With AI search, with all the different tools that they have, with beats per minute and keys, everything that they do, it is the literal best place for you to find films from artists, indie artists that are going to elevate your wedding films. We love MusicBed, and we love that they've been a partner with us since the beginning, and we've been using them exclusively for a decade at this point. And if you're looking to save time and have the best music for your wedding films, check out howtofilmweddings.com/musicbed for special promos and trials so that you can make your films better today. Now, let's hop back into the episode. So last year was weird. You still had a profitable year. What is into 2025? What were you doing in 2024? Like, what are you doing so that you can stay in front of people now and so you can be successful? And then what is 2025 looking like for you?
Yeah. So, and I want to go back to what you were saying, because I remember when you were talking about that, and I honestly couldn't have been more happy that you were saying that as like someone, because we see you as someone that's obviously like killing it in the game, and how validating it was to basically the rest of us, because we know that we all feel that, especially like from time to time. And last year, it's like, I think you even mentioned like, hey, like I think for sure it is good to know your worth, but also to know your market and to be real with your market and adjust accordingly to that. So when you said something along those lines, I'm like, yes, that, because I feel as though the know your worth, when pushed a little bit too far, can actually be fairly detrimental to your business if you're turning your nose at essentially everything that's, even if it's like a cool, one of the things that I did was offer a lesser package, because I think for too long I had offered this package that included everything and was this high dollar. And I was turning my nose at these cool things that still would have been awesome travel gigs and awesome multi-day things, and even like at cool venues that would have served me long term, and I still would have made money out of it. And there was no reason for me to really turn my nose at something like that just because, like, oh, they only want, 5,000. I'm worth twice, three times that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I know you know what I'm
The
saying because
humble
you,
pie.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm, it's interesting to be on this side of the microphone where people look up to you. And, me and Nick just started this in 2018, trying to help people with where we're at. And I had to like really make a choice. I had been considering, do I want to stop shooting and just do education only? And that's why I let things kind of settle. And once I didn't have any new weddings and I was just like, no, I love doing weddings. I really enjoy this. I want to add photography. I want to try new things. But like creatively, education is great, but I have so much more fun educating now that I have real life, real experience going on, and people are saying, what are you doing to get that booking? What'd you do? How are you? And now I'm able to have this fire and excitement that then fuels how to film weddings. And so as I look into my year, I'm like, what is making me excited and getting out there and shooting? I just did a wedding in Georgia a few weeks ago, and two years ago I would have charged 15, 18 grand for it, and I charged them 10 grand. And it's like, that's still a lot of freaking money. First of all, it's like, right. It's not like I can go there and be like, oh my gosh, I have to make 10 grand. I mean, I know I could make more doing certain things, but they wanted to book, and I was like, let's do it. And I was able to bring Brandon from Nova Film Co with me and make a new friend out in Atlanta. He's amazing. Did a little meetup with vendors or other wedding filmmakers for brunch while I was in Atlanta. Just made the most out of it. But the footage, I'm editing that wedding right now. That wedding is going to book me so many weddings. It's so good. They sent me home footage. They sent me all this different stuff to just really dig into the kind of films I want to do. And like you said, it serves me in the future. And I think so many of us don't think, well, that's worth doing because that will make me money. That's a check. That's good. They love me. This is their budget. Like it's going to be a fun time. I'm going to have creatively, and it's going to give me content. I've already made 3 or 4 reels from their wedding. I filmed behind the scenes on my Ray-Bans or whatever, my Meta glasses. And then like, I just have all this content, all this momentum because I'm allowing myself to say, this is what the market is right now. I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but
that's good.
Anything you want to add to that before I get moving to my next?
Yeah. You're hitting the nail on the head because we can't get in our own way. And so when I talk to like newer people that are getting into the industry, I tell them all the time, it's like, hey, you're charging 15 to 2,500. It took me like a year to get over $1,000 for my first wedding. Like, good for you. Because at the end of the day, the comparison game can be so dangerous. It's like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to say, hey, why am I charging 3 when this person's charging 10 or 12? It's like 3 is not a small amount of money. It's not an inconsequential amount of money to anybody. And you're going to have a fun time and you're going to do the best job in the world. So I'd say keep to that mindset, keep to that perspective that I kind of had to earn the hard way, where before it's like, why is everyone doing more cooler weddings at more higher prices than me? And that it will come time. I mean, I'm kind of old. I don't know how old you are. I'm 32, but
I'm 40.
Dude, you don't look 40.
Tell me again. Give me more.
Dude, you look freaking young. But anyways, that's all to say that's like, it's been about 10 years. And I think you keep pressing on with it and you have a good attitude about it, and it will for sure come. You'll get those weddings, even if you have to cut them a little break, even if you have to be someone that's been doing it for 17 years, cut them a little break in order to have a really awesome time, and then have your whole job revolves around you getting your own content. It's the best job in the world. It's a huge asset for you that you do for yourself all the time. It comes with what you do. There's no setting aside extra time to get content or hire someone else to get the content. You get the content. We have no excuse not to be pushing it out all the time.
I love what you're saying. And I love that you mentioned the word perspective. And I think 2024 was a year of a perspective shift for so many of us, because what I've said on the podcast and what I truly believe is that the entire market shifted and corrected itself last year after 3 years after COVID, the big amount of weddings in 21 and 2. And then it's like an election year, all these different things going on. And like people are out of money and inflation, and it's like everything corrected. And just because I was charging 18K to start with in 22 doesn't make me a loser for charging 12.5 to start in 25. That's just what I had to do. It's the first time since 2007 that I've had to bring my prices down. And, the pride in me, I turned down so many weddings for 2024 that had like a $10,000 to $12,000 budget. And in hindsight, like what you're saying about creating the content, is because I was able to go do that wedding in Georgia a week and a half ago. Like I'm posting in my stories, I'm showing people behind the scenes of what I'm doing. I'm getting extra reels. People that are interested in booking me are following me on Instagram. And those are the people that are seeing my stories and seeing me out at weddings and booking me. And I am booking more because I've just created momentum and created things to post about and created content around what I'm doing. And my perspective shifted. So it was like, I have to be working this differently than I did in 22. I got to get back out there. I got to do stuff differently. And that to me was the part that feels a little humble, me being at the little magazine release party the other day for the local magazine, or me getting coffee with the thing. And so anyway, all that to be said, risks and taking risks. You did this in 2022. 2023 and 4 kind of happen. You're building. What does 25 look like for you? And what are you doing? I saw yesterday you had a styled shoot. Like what kinds of perspective could you give our audience of somebody that's maybe charging what you're charging? What are you doing to keep the fire going? What are you doing to build?
Yeah. So basically all of last year. So you have kids, right?
I have a couple. Yeah.
Okay. I have kids too. I know I said that, but you know how from age 0 to 1 is when you experience the most amount of change from your child. Like that's the most the kid will change throughout his whole lifetime, comparable to all the single years after the fact. Like 0, being born to 1, they change a ton. That I can compare that analogy to all of 2024, where I did so many things different that I really leaned on to learn from the beginning of 2024 to where it ended up at the end of 24 and what I'm taking on to this year right now. I got into all this online education. I started shooting in different picture profiles. I learned to log and I learned how to really color grade. So color grading was a big thing. I learned different types of composition. I learned how to do sound design. I bought Boomer's courses and I learned how to take those all apart and do the vocals and the instrumentals and put them back together. Creatively, I took a huge deep dive into honing in on the craft. That is the creative side of what I try to do this year that would make me stand out a little bit more. And on the actual industry side, I made way more connections and actually did a good job of meeting people in the industry that have big names here in Arizona. So I joined a society here in Arizona, a wedding vendor society that I actually really love. They all are super supportive. I've done the first style shoots I've ever done actually in my life, like actual awesome style shoots. The first one of the year was actually started off with a huge bang. It was at the Global Ambassador, and we just hit it out of the park with that. And I think that got me a lot of bookings. And from there, if anything was creative that was going to come by at my doorstep, I didn't turn it down. And so that got the juices flowing between all of the weddings, which are more like documentaries sprinkled in with a little bit of our own direction, and me falling more in love with actually directing from all these different style shoots that I was fortunate enough to be a part of. What I actually cultivated into was a production at the end of the year that I had been planning since August, which was my music video, which I did at the Canby Hotel, which it was, that has its own stories, but I can dive into that.
I would love to hear about it because Boomer, I think, sent it to me and said, dude, you got to watch this. It might have been Stanton. I can't remember. And it's awesome. So maybe tee it up. We'll try to put it in the show notes so people can watch it. But when did you get the idea for this, and what was the process like a little bit?
So the philosophy behind it all was, as I was doing more and more style shoots, I was thinking to myself, you know what I've noticed about style shoots is that for the most part, and this makes sense, they're all photo forward or planner forward, because a lot of the goal with many of them is to be published on a magazine or have it for their portfolio, which makes total sense. And I love making the videos. I love what I'm able to get out of it, but that's usually not the emphasis of what they need. They don't really need it for their magazine. They don't, need it for maybe a photographer's portfolio and whatnot. And the idea came last summer. What if we did an actual production, an actual video, a small film with music, and it had all of the elements of a style shoot. So a bride and a groom and a beautiful venue and all this different decor. The decor that we ended up coming up with very much represented like my brand. It's like all black and the black flowers, and that skull is hanging up on the arch. And so it was an ambitious idea because it was really hard for me to articulate what it was to basically everyone else. So when I came to other vendors and planners and said, this is what I want to do, I want to make a style shoot, but I want it to be a formal production with choreography and a story, and I want people to feel some kind of emotion about it. I don't want to share center with any other photographer. I'm happy to have a photographer there, but this can't be a situation where we're taking turns here. This is like a small film production that will have a day to shoot. And so what really was touching to me and emotional, I got all the emotions out before I actually shot, but before that day, I feel like everything up to my wedding film career had kind of like I believe it actually ended up building up to that one single day at the Canby, because I would explain it to other people in my family. It's like, oh, what's the ROI on that? What's the purpose on this? What can you get out of it? Are you going to add it to a bundle? Are you going to add it as a service? Like, what's the benefit of this, of doing something like this? And I keep thinking to myself, the benefit is that it will exist. Like, people will see it. It will be a creation that I thought of when we implemented it, and people will be proud to have been a part of it if we can do it the right way, if we can do it the way that I had been imagining. So I'm super, super, super fortunate to have had the help of Dominique is her name. She owns Sol Agave, and she's a wonderful wedding planner, but she's also a crazy brain. As soon as I brought the idea to her, she knew the plan immediately. He's like, Kyle, you got to write a script. You got to write all of your shot lists. You got to write the frame rates. You got to write the focal lengths. You got to treat it like an actual video, because we're so used to run and gun in the wedding film, in the wedding industry. It's like we go and we shoot and we do our best to follow along, and we change things as we go. But everything in that wedding video, everything in that music video had been written. I wrote down all the different compositions, all the different emotions, all the different choreography. I wrote the emotions for what I wanted the choreography to do at certain times. Those are all time-stamped. So I had homework with this. And it was a lot of homework. But I'm so, so grateful that everyone came together. Like, the florals came together. With everyone that's an extra on that was just another wedding vendor willing to give up their time to come support something that I had no idea was going to turn out. And that's what was really, really touching to me. And I think it turned out pretty great. I loved it.
Yeah. So explain to the listener what it is. What did it become?
Yeah. So what it ended up being is it's a 4.5-minute film, and it's to a fairly popular song. And I heard that song back in the summer, but I knew that I loved the emotion of it. So there's kind of like give and take between the singer and the second singer. And I thought to myself, it would be really awesome if there was like a music video to this song, but in like the wedding industry, where there's dancing and there's lip syncing to this song, and they are very much becoming these characters. And just like with the style shoot, or just like with other music videos, there's nuance, there's abstract concepts to them. They're not necessarily doing things that people would do in real life. That's the whole purpose of the art, is it's up to your interpretation. So I got 2 wonderful dancers, and I got a team of wonderful vendors to set the stage at the Canby Hotel in Phoenix, which extremely grateful for them even letting us do a whole production there. That we had to do a production there. We had the whole day to ourselves to shoot at the Canby, and they were extremely gracious with us using the whole space. I hired an actual director of photography because I knew that I wanted someone that actually knew filmmaking and not necessarily someone that only knew the wedding world. And it was up to me to be hands-off. I shot about 33% of it, but it was up to me to be hands-off and be a director in this whole thing. And he was wonderful too. So it ended up being this 5-minute video where there's dancing, there's lip syncing, there's nuance, there's the extras are looking towards the front of the aisle in a wedding space, in a ceremony space. And what they're experiencing is objective. And what this bride and groom are doing, everything within this film is subjective to them, where they're coming together, they're finding resolve, kind of distance at first, and as the film is coming together and coming to a close and coming to its big crescendo, they found resolve, and they're just doing this beautiful choreography, and it's amazing. It came out better than I had imagined. So you can't always say that. And
it's very amazing. Yeah. I was like, okay, we got to get this guy on this podcast. And I think it's cool, and kind of wrapping up, which I hate to do, is like, you're taking calculated risks. they get less and less risky the further you get into business, the older you get. But like they also, as in risky, as in your family's not going to eat if you create this risk. That's kind of the risk I took when I quit my full-time job. It's like, babe, I think I can make it work. And I'm putting this bridal show on my credit card and it's going to be fine. It's like, oh dear God, I got to book 8 weddings with this thing or I'm screwed, and then now it's like, hey, the risk I want to take is I want to try this new product or try this new film or whatever I want to add photography. That's like the big risk I took this last year is like, I want to do it. People are going to think I'm dumb, which I don't care. And if you're not taking calculated risks, and you're not doing that, you're going to find yourself, stagnant, and you're going to find yourself I think that as creatives, we have to be doing that. And you taking this risk, what I think is cool about it is like this opens up in my mind an entirely new version of what a styled shoot could be. And people will benefit, wedding filmmakers or filmmakers, whatever, will benefit from you taking that risk. And that's the thing that I think. I had a friend the other day and she's a singer and she's amazing. And we were at this dinner. It was 3 couples, and she used to be like a worship leader at our church. It's a very big church. And she stopped recently and she started recording her own stuff. And one of the wives at the dinner was like, so what are you doing with your music? Like, are you trying to monetize it or how are you growing your audience? And she was like, oh, I'm just creating music. I just love music. And it was so refreshing because I think we're in this world where it's like, well, like Instagram creators account drives me nuts because the only thing they talk about is growing your following, making more reach, doing whatever trend it is so that you can show up to more people instead of being like, what are you creating? What do you want to be creating? What do you want to be doing? What are you excited about doing? I'm not excited about dancing around and doing like pointing at the screen like you used to have to on Instagram Reels back in the day. Like I'm excited about figuring out right now how to do flash photography. I'm just into it. That's what it sounds dorky to others, but it's like I want to learn how to do that really well. I like taking photos. I've done 26 sessions since November with different people. And it's like, I'm just enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. And if it's like, you got to make money, you got to have a following, people have to know you exist, but there's also got to be that layer in there where like you're creating something for you because you just want it to exist. And if you're not doing that, you're going to blend in with everyone. And what's cool about that is when you do take that risk, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but whenever you knock it out of the park or create something like you've created, it opens up this whole new world for other people to follow as the pioneer for the thing that you did. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh, it'd be so cool for the styled shoot here in town to like do something similar with a video, like where, you're watching your film and I'm like, wait a second, the bride and groom are singing. Like, what is happening here? It's just different. And it's not just what everybody does. We're following the trend. You got to have this look. And I think that's really inspiring watching you take those risks.
No, I super, super appreciate that. I think, like I said, but that probably just is super subconscious of me throughout like this whole journey of what I've had to do in terms of like jumping ship to do filmmaking and not only doing it, but also trying to introduce new ways of, at least new to the area, ways of telling a story. The amazing thing about wedding film is that it never gets stale because all these different possibilities of how to tell a story through film and through audio and through visual multiply on top of each other. So my whole thing is just not creating burnout for myself. Like you said, at least for me, if I'm not staying creative, it's a win-win for everyone because I get to stay passionate about what I do. The client sees that and they get to see when we talk, it's not so much about a sale that I'm trying to tell this whimsical, loving story. It's about I'm staying passionate about being creative for you guys. And if you're of the demographic of the buyer type, like a dreamer that loves the aesthetic and loves that I am having a fun time and I'm genuinely doing what I love, which is true, and I'm keeping it fresh for myself, then everyone wins. Like we're all having this amazing time together. And so that was a lot of the reason why I thought that this should exist as well, because this was a fairly new concept in the industry. It's not to say that making music videos, obviously, or making short films is a new concept. It's just I wanted other wedding vendors as well to see this can exist because wedding filmmaking is becoming just like traditional filmmaking. So we should all embrace something a little bit more artistic and have people see that this tells a different story than photo. And not only that, it can do so much more than what you might think wedding film can do if we actually take a little bit of a nuanced, productive side to making them. Right.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. And, you know, kind of the theme of today, just talking about taking risks. You know, I wasn't going to say it, but like you slid into our DMs and said, "Hey, I'm Kyle. I do this." And I read it and I was just like, we get that a lot from people. We're not that big. It's, you know, 5 or 6 times a month. It's not like thousands. Yeah. Yeah, just so many with our massive following. But it was just like, we were at our retreat and I was like, okay, I got to remember to kind of look up whoever this guy is. I've seen him around. And then I saw like you on a call with Boomer. I was like, oh yeah, I need to. And then I was on a live Zoom or a live Instagram call and you were like, commented on there. That's like, oh, there he is. I need to call you back. And then like, I just kept seeing you and you keep showing up. And it wasn't that I wasn't wanting to, but like you took the risk of being like, well, this guy might think I'm whatever. And I think that you just did it. You went for it. And it's like, I'm so happy we had this conversation. And I think so many of us, and I've said this maybe 1,000 times over the years in the podcast, the people that take action and take the risks and take the steps and like, don't try to figure it all out before they take at least the next step. Those are the ones that go further faster because they're not worried about like 6 steps down the road. I mean, you've got to calculate and you got to plan for things, but like, you're passionate about filmmaking. You know it's going to work. You're going to figure it out. You're going to do it. You quit your job. Like, you know, to some people, I'm not saying quit your job. I'm just saying like you have to be taking that action and taking risks. And if you're not, you're getting comfortable. And comfort is like the thief of all excitement in your life and all growth. And so that is what I find very endearing about you and like motivating from you is like, oh yeah, like, I'm doing some of those things too. And I hope the listeners out there feel motivated and want more. And speaking of wanting more, I know we talked a little bit beforehand, you're doing a few things. If people want to find you, hit us with your Instagram handle, your website. And then I think you've got some stuff you're working on too. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So you can find me. I am fortunate enough to have a very typical first name, but a very unique last name. So they can find me on Kyle Hustis, Kyle Hustis. That's my Instagram. You can find me through kylehustis.com. The actual name of the business is Hustis Film Co. So they can find me through hustisfilmco.com, but I'm mostly on Instagram. And they can find all the pinned videos are probably my proudest work. The pinned videos are actually, funny enough, the 3 top ones are the 3 things that I've directed specifically, one of them being the music video. And then I'll post it on YouTube. I haven't actually done that yet, but I'm going to. I'm going to post it on YouTube. Boomer convinced me to. And then, so one thing that we're actually starting to roll out, at least here in Arizona, me and an associate friend of mine, his name is Cameron Bradshaw, also a super talented filmmaker, very much on the business side of things. He's amazing. We complement each other in that a lot, where he might not be super well known. Not to say that I'm super well known, but he just kills it in business and he has an amazing business strategy. So we're actually launching Wedding Crashers, which is our own wedding film education. So we'll be doing our first workshop this Saturday at that same venue at the Canby where I did the music video.
It's incredible. And we'll put links into all that. The Wedding Crashers, it sounds awesome. I can't wait to come be part of something in that. I appreciate you taking the time. There's so much more to dig into. If people want to reach out to you, definitely follow him on Instagram. Definitely one of these people I see as like an up and comer, that it's just like setting the tone for a lot of stuff we're doing as wedding filmmakers. So thanks for taking the time to be on. Hopefully this wasn't too painful, Kyle. I appreciate your time.
No, dude. Hopefully it wasn't painful for you, man.
This was a blast.
Yeah, I love, honestly, thank you. And thanks for acknowledging the fact that, yeah, I basically kind of cold called you a few times via DMs. And I'm overall, like, I'm super happy that the story can get out there. Not to say that I am the most creative or inspirational person, but I hope that people can see that like wedding film in general deserves passionate people. And so if anything, I'd hope to say that I'm at least that passionate person.
You should be proud of yourself and your passion. And for me, it's like, I love making a new friend, and I'm happy that you reached out. I'm in Arizona 2 more times this year, and I'll be like shooting you a message and seeing if we can hang out. So
love it.
Thank you so much for your time, man. Appreciate you being here.
All right. Appreciate you, man. Peace out. Love you.
Thanks again, Kyle, for being on the podcast. Be sure to go over at Kyle Hustis, Hustis, and follow him, and check out hustisfilmco.com. If you go to his Instagram page, one of the pinned posts is that music video he was talking about. It's super dope. I really appreciate you taking the time, Kyle, today just to kind of dig in and talk about what you've been doing with your brand. I'm inspired, and I know our audience will be as well. Before I head out today, be sure to check us out at howtofilmweddings.com. All the new updates of things that we're doing, our digital template shop, our posing guides, our LUTs, our presets, all those things can be found at howtofilmweddings.com. We couldn't do this without you, without our community. Thanks to our sponsors, VidFlow and MusicBed. Everyone have an incredible week. And until next time, we'll see you.